I woke up in a bright, sterile room, the steady beep of machines echoing in my ears. My name is Nora. I'm 29 years old, and I never imagined I'd be fighting for my life alone in an ICU. With trembling hands, I dialed my parents' number for the 10th time, only to reach voicemail again. The nurse touched my shoulder gently. "We need family consent for emergency surgery, miss." That's when I realized the devastating truth. In my darkest hour, my family had chosen something else over me. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button, because what my parents prioritized over my life will shock you. Growing up, I was always the responsible one in our family. As the oldest daughter, I learned early on that my role was to be dependable, steady, and low maintenance. My sister Abigail, 4 years younger than me, was a different story entirely. From the time she could talk, Abigail demanded attention. She would throw tantrums over the smallest things: the wrong color cup at dinner, a TV show ending, or someone looking at her the wrong way. While most kids grow out of this phase, Abigail never did. Her meltdowns only became more elaborate and dramatic as she got older. My parents, Thomas and Margaret Wilson, built their entire world around keeping Abigail calm. Dad would rush home from work if Mom called saying Abigail was upset. They'd cancel plans, reschedule appointments, and rearrange their lives to accommodate her moods. Nothing was too important to sacrifice if Abigail was having a bad day. I still remember my 16th birthday when they missed my piano recital because Abigail couldn't find her favorite sweater and refused to stop crying. I had practiced for months, even earning a solo. When I got home clutching my program with no one to show it to, Mom just said, "You know how your sister gets. You're the strong one. You understand." And I did understand in the way children understand the rules of their household, without ever having them explicitly stated. The rule in our house was simple: Abigail's needs always came first. By the time I turned 16, I had already started working part-time jobs. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew asking for anything from my parents felt like taking resources away from Abigail. College applications came around, and while my friends' parents were helping them tour campuses and fill out financial aid forms, I was alone at the kitchen table applying for every scholarship I could find. "Nora is so independent," my mother would brag to her friends. "She just does everything herself." What she never mentioned was that I had no choice. I worked my way through college, sometimes holding down 3 jobs while maintaining my GPA. I got into law school on a partial scholarship and took out loans for the rest. Meanwhile, Abigail dropped out of community college because the pressure was too much and moved back home, where my parents continued to support her completely. After law school, I built a successful career at a corporate law firm in the city. I bought my own apartment, paid off my student loans, and even started sending money home to help my parents with their mortgage. They never really thanked me for it, just mentioned casually how helpful it was since so much of their income went to supporting Abigail. At 25, Abigail still lived at home. She would occasionally get jobs, but quit within weeks because coworkers were mean or bosses were unfair. My parents never pushed her to try again, just nodded sympathetically and assured her the right opportunity would come along. As the years passed, I visited home less and less. Each visit followed the same pattern. Abigail would have some crisis, my parents would drop everything to attend to her, and I'd sit alone in the kitchen wondering why I'd bothered to come at all. The strange thing was, despite everything, I still loved my family. I still called every Sunday. I still sent birthday and Christmas gifts. I still hoped that someday, somehow, my parents would see me, really see me, and acknowledge all I had done and continued to do. My colleagues often asked why I worked so hard, took on so many clients, stayed at the office until midnight. The truth was, being needed professionally filled a void that my family had created. At work, my efforts were recognized. My contributions mattered. People depended on me because I was good at what I did, not just because I was the strong one who could handle being ignored. The last Thanksgiving I spent with my family was 8 months before the accident. Abigail had a meltdown because the stuffing wasn't made the way she liked it. She threw her plate across the room, shattering it against the wall, and locked herself in the bathroom. My parents spent the next hour coaxing her out while the food got cold. When they finally returned to the table, Dad just said, "Let's not make a big deal about this, Nora," as if I had been the one to cause the scene. I finished my cold turkey in silence, drove back to the city that night instead of staying over as planned, and cried the whole way home. That should have been my breaking point, but old habits die hard. When Mom called the next week asking if I could help with their insurance paperwork, I said yes. When Dad needed advice about his retirement plan, I spent hours researching options for him. When they mentioned struggling with some bills, I increased the amount I sent home each month, because no matter how they treated me, they were still my family. And I still held on to the hope that someday they would treat me like I was truly part of it. Little did I know that it would take me nearly dying for me to finally see the truth about our family dynamic, and for me to finally find the strength to put myself first. The morning of the accident started like any other Tuesday. I woke up at 5:30, went for a quick run around my neighborhood, showered, and was at my desk by 7 with a large coffee and a protein bar. I had a major client meeting at 10, and I wanted to review all my notes one more time. Jefferson Technologies was considering our firm for their legal representation, a contract worth millions. As the youngest senior associate, I had worked countless late nights preparing for this pitch. My boss had made it clear land this client, and I'd be on the fast track to making partner. I was reviewing the final slide deck when my phone rang. Seeing my mom's name on the screen, I almost didn't answer. Our Sunday call had been just 2 days ago, and she rarely called outside of that. Something must be wrong. Mom, is everything okay? Nora, we need you to come over right away, she said, her voice tense. Right now, Mom, I have a huge meeting this morning. Is it an emergency? Is someone hurt? It's Abigail, she said, as if that explained everything. She's having a really hard time right now. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What happened? She's redoing her bedroom and the paint samples came out all wrong. She's been crying since yesterday afternoon. Nothing we say is helping. I checked the time, 7:30. Mom, I'm sorry Abigail is upset about paint colors, but I have a career-defining meeting in 2.5 hours. I can't just drop everything and drive an hour each way, because the paint samples don't match what she imagined. Nora, my mother's voice took on that familiar disappointed tone. Your sister needs support right now. You know how sensitive she is about her space. She values your opinion. Can we FaceTime? I could look at the colors virtually. She needs you here in person. She specifically asked for you. That was unusual. Abigail rarely asked for me specifically unless she wanted something. Still, I felt that familiar tug of obligation. Mom, I really can't come before my meeting. It's too important. I could come by this afternoon around 3. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy with disapproval. I suppose if your work is more important than your family, she finally said. That's not fair, and you know it, I replied, feeling the old frustration rise. I'll come after my meeting. Tell Abigail I'll be there around 3, okay? She agreed reluctantly, and I returned to my presentation, though my concentration was broken. Why did they always do this? Why did Abigail's paint crisis trump my career opportunity? And why, despite knowing better, did I still feel guilty? The meeting went well, but not great. I was distracted checking my phone repeatedly as my mother sent increasingly urgent texts about Abigail's deteriorating state. By the end of the presentation, the client seemed impressed, but not fully convinced. My boss gave me a questioning look as they left, and I knew I hadn't brought my A game. Family emergency, I explained briefly as I gathered my things. I need to take the afternoon off. He nodded, though I could see the disappointment. Follow up with Jefferson tomorrow. Don't lose this one, Nora. It was raining heavily as I drove out of the city. Traffic was backed up due to the weather, and my windshield wipers could barely keep up with the downpour. I was already tense from the meeting, and now I was going to be late to Abigail's paint emergency. My phone rang through the car's Bluetooth, my mother again. I'm on my way, Mom, I said, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. The rain is slowing me down. Abigail's really upset that you're not here yet. She says you don't care about her. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I am literally driving through a storm to help her pick paint colors. How is that not caring? You know how she gets, Nora. She's sensitive. I was about to respond when I saw the truck ahead of me suddenly swerve. In what felt like slow motion, I watched it fishtail on the wet pavement, its trailer swinging wildly into my lane. I slammed on my brakes and tried to steer away, but there was nowhere to go. The last thing I heard was my mother's voice calling my name as the truck's trailer slammed into the driver's side of my car. The impact was deafening. Metal crushed against metal as my car spun across the highway. The airbag exploded in my face and pain shot through my body. I felt my car flip once, twice, before coming to rest upside down in the median. Everything hurt. Warm blood trickled down my face from a cut on my forehead. My left arm was pinned between the door and my seat, and each breath sent sharp pains through my chest. The rain pattered against the crumpled roof of my car now below me, as I hung suspended by my seatbelt. Through the shattered window, I could see people running toward my car. Someone was shouting to call an ambulance. I tried to move but couldn't. My phone had fallen somewhere in the car. With my free hand, I fumbled around until I found it on what was now the ceiling of the car. The screen was cracked but still working. With trembling fingers, I called my mom back. "Nora, where are you? Abigail is getting impatient." "Mom," I gasped, each word sending pain through my chest. "I've been in an accident. It's bad. I'm trapped in the car. There's an ambulance coming." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Oh my God, where are you?" "We'll come right away." I tried to explain my location before a paramedic reached through the window and took the phone from my hand. "Ma'am, your daughter's been in a serious accident. We're taking her to Memorial Hospital downtown. She's conscious but injured." He listened for a moment. "Yes, Memorial Hospital. Please meet us there as soon as possible." As they worked to cut me out of the car, I drifted in and out of consciousness. The pain was overwhelming. But through it all, one thought kept surfacing. My parents would be at the hospital when I got there. They would finally drop everything, even Abigail's paint crisis, because this was a real emergency. I had no idea then how wrong I would be. I regained consciousness in the emergency room, the bright lights making me wince. Doctors and nurses moved around me with urgent efficiency. A tall doctor with gray hair leaned over me. "Nora, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Winters. You've been in a car accident." I tried to nod but gasped at the pain. "Try not to move," he said. "You have several broken ribs, a fractured pelvis, internal bleeding, and a possible concussion. We need to take you into surgery right away to address the internal bleeding." Surgery. The word sent a wave of panic through me. "My parents," I managed to say. "Are they here?" A nurse beside the doctor shook her head slightly. "Not yet, honey. Is there someone we can call for you?" I called them before the ambulance. They know. Speaking hurt each word like fire in my chest. "We'll try them again," the nurse promised, taking my phone from a plastic bag of my belongings. As they prepared me for surgery, running tests, and inserting IVs, the nurse repeatedly tried to reach my parents. Each call went to voicemail. I could see the concern growing on her face. "Nora, we need a family member to consent to the surgery," Dr. Winters explained. "It's standard procedure for non-emergency operations." "This isn't an emergency?" I asked, confused by the urgency around me. "Your condition is serious but stable for the moment. The surgery is urgent but technically elective. Hospital policy requires family consent when possible." "Keep trying my parents," I pleaded. "They'll come." Another hour passed. The pain medication they gave me helped, but I could tell the doctors were getting anxious to proceed. My phone rang suddenly, and the nurse quickly answered it, relief on her face. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Nurse Chen at Memorial Hospital. Your daughter Nora has been in a serious accident and needs surgery." Her face fell as she listened. "I understand, but this is quite serious." "Yes, I'll tell her." She hung up and looked at me apologetically. "Your mother says they're dealing with a situation at home with your sister. She says they'll try to come later tonight." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Did you tell her I need surgery?" "I did. She said you're strong and she knows you'll be fine." Tears burned in my eyes. Even now, even when I was lying in a hospital bed waiting for surgery, Abigail's needs came first. "Is there anyone else we can call?" the nurse asked gently. I thought for a moment. "David Kaplan, he's my colleague." I recited his number, which I knew by heart. Within 30 minutes, David arrived looking worried but composed in his suit, clearly having come straight from the office. Nora, my God, what happened? I explained about the accident then, about needing consent for surgery. Your parents aren't here, he asked, confused. My sister is having a crisis over paint colors, I said, not bothering to hide the bitterness in my voice. David's expression shifted from confusion to anger. Are you serious? I just nodded, too tired and hurt to defend my family anymore. David signed the consent forms as my emergency contact, a designation I'd given him years ago for work purposes, never thinking it would actually be needed. As they prepared to wheel me to the operating room, he squeezed my hand. I'll be here when you wake up, Nora. I promise. And he was unlike my family. I came out of anesthesia hours later to find David sitting beside my bed in the ICU working on his laptop. Hey there, he said, setting his computer aside. Surgery went well. They stopped the internal bleeding and stabilized your fractures. My parents, I asked, already knowing the answer. No sign of them. I tried calling several times. I closed my eyes, too exhausted to even cry. Thank you for being here. Of course, he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to drop everything for a colleague in need. I called the firm, by the way. Everyone sends their best, and they said not to worry about Jefferson Technologies. Parker handled the follow-up, and they signed with us. At least something had gone right today. As evening turned to night, I drifted in and out of sleep. Each time I woke, David was there, sometimes working, sometimes just watching over me. No call from my parents came. The next morning, still groggy from pain medication, I asked David to do me one more favor. Can you call my parents' neighbor, Mrs. Fenton, just to check if everything's okay at the house? Maybe something happened to them too. Even now, I was making excuses for them. David made the call, putting it on speaker so I could hear. Oh, they're all fine, dear, Mrs. Fenton assured us. I saw them just this morning. Thomas was mowing the lawn, and Margaret was helping Abigail bring in some shopping bags. Looked like they'd been to that home decorating store. Is everything all right? David thanked her and hung up, looking at me with sadness and anger in his eyes. Nora, it's okay, I said automatically, the words I'd been saying my whole life whenever my family let me down. I'm used to it. But as I lay there in the ICU tubes and monitors attached to my broken body, I realized it wasn't okay. It had never been okay. And for the first time in my life, I was going to stop pretending that it was. As I lay in the ICU bed the next morning, I made a decision. If my family couldn't be bothered to check on me after a life-threatening accident, I needed to protect myself legally. With David's help, I called James Harrigan, my personal attorney, who had helped me with my will and other legal matters in the past. James, I need you to come to Memorial Hospital as soon as possible. I explained, my voice still weak. Bring whatever paperwork you need to change my medical proxy will and any other relevant documents. Nora, what happened? He asked, alarmed. I gave him a brief overview of the accident and my family's absence. I'll be there within the hour, he promised. True to his word, James arrived 50 minutes later, briefcase in hand and concern written across his face. He was in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and the kind of steady presence that had always made me feel secure. My God, Nora, he said, taking in my condition. You look like you've been through hell. Feels like it too. I managed a weak smile. Thank you for coming. James set his briefcase on the small table and pulled a chair close to my bed. I brought the paperwork to change your medical proxy and amend your will. But before we do anything, tell me exactly what's going on with your family. This doesn't sound like a simple miscommunication. I told him everything from the accident to the multiple unanswered calls to the conversation the nurse had with my mother. James listened intently, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Have they called at all since then? He asked. Not once, I replied. It's been almost 48 hours since the accident. James shook his head in disbelief. Would you like me to call them? Sometimes hearing from a lawyer makes people take things more seriously. Would you? I asked, relieved at the suggestion. I'd like to understand exactly why they haven't come. With your permission, I'd like to record the call, James said. Not for legal purposes necessarily, but so you can hear exactly what they say unfiltered. I nodded my agreement. James set up his phone to record, then dialed my parents' number, putting it on speaker. After 3 rings, my father answered. Hello, Mr. Wilson. This is James Harrigan, Nora's attorney. Attorney. My father sounded confused. Is something wrong? Mr. Wilson, I'm calling from Memorial Hospital, where your daughter has been for the past 2 days following a serious car accident. She's in the ICU and has undergone emergency surgery. There was a pause. Yes, we know about the accident. We've been meaning to visit, but we've had a situation here at home. Could you explain the situation that's prevented you from visiting your daughter in the intensive care unit? James asked, his tone professional, but with an edge. Well, my father sounded defensive now. Our younger daughter Abigail has been going through a difficult time. She's redoing her bedroom, and there was an issue with the paint colors. She's very particular about her environment, and when the samples didn't match what she expected, she became quite distraught. Let me understand, James said slowly. Your daughter Nora is in intensive care after nearly dying in a car accident, and you haven't visited because your other daughter is upset about paint colors. It's not that simple, my father protested. Abigail has special emotional needs. When she gets upset, it can take days for her to calm down. She needs our full support during these episodes. And Nora doesn't need support while she's in intensive care. Nora has always been independent. She understands how things are with Abigail. She's strong, she can handle this. I felt a tear slide down my cheek as I heard my father dismiss my crisis so easily. Mr. Wilson, James's voice had grown cold. Your daughter has multiple broken bones, internal bleeding that required emergency surgery and is currently in the ICU. She could have died. The doctors are still monitoring her closely for complications. This isn't a situation where being strong or independent is relevant. There was silence on the other end. We didn't realize it was that serious, my father finally said, though his tone suggested he still didn't fully grasp the situation. Margaret spoke to a nurse who didn't indicate it was life-threatening. It was and still is extremely serious, James emphasized. The hospital has been trying to reach you repeatedly. We'll try to come visit when Abigail is feeling better, my father said. Maybe tomorrow or the next day. I strongly suggest you come today, Mr. Wilson, James replied. Nora is making some important legal decisions regarding her care and estate, and you might want to be part of that conversation. Legal decisions. What kind of legal decisions? That's between me and my client. Good day, Mr. Wilson. James ended the call and looked at me. Did you hear everything you needed to hear? I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. I heard exactly who they are and who they've always been. I took a painful breath. Let's make those changes now. For the next hour, James and I went through all my legal documents. I removed my parents as my medical proxies, designating David instead, with James as a backup. I revised my will, removing my parents and sister as beneficiaries. I canceled the automatic transfers I had set up to help with my parents' mortgage and Abigail's expenses. I drafted a letter revoking the permission I'd given them to use my vacation home in Vermont. Are you sure about all this, Nora? James asked when we finished. These are significant changes. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied. For 30 years, I've been there for them emotionally, physically, and financially. And when I needed them just once, they chose paint colors over my life. So yes, I'm sure. James nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'll file everything today. And Nora, for what it's worth, I think you're making the right decision. Family should be there when it matters most. As he packed up his briefcase, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I had put myself first. It hurt like lancing a long, festering wound, but I knew it was necessary for healing to finally begin. 3 days after my accident, as I was being moved from the ICU to a regular room, my parents finally arrived. I was sitting up in bed, still connected to monitors, but feeling slightly better when they walked in without knocking. No flowers, no card, no balloon that said, "Get well soon." Just my parents looking inconvenienced and slightly annoyed. Parking at this hospital is ridiculous, my mother complained by way of greeting. We had to walk all the way from the back lot. I stared at them, these people who had raised me, trying to see them objectively for perhaps the first time in my life. They looked exactly the same as always, my father in his golf shirt and khakis, my mother in her casual but expensive outfit, both of them healthy and untroubled, as if they were stopping by for a routine visit rather than seeing their critically injured daughter for the first time. "Hello," I said simply, not bothering to hide my disappointment. "You look better than we expected," my father said, glancing around the hospital room. "Your lawyer made it sound like you were at death's door." I replied. I had internal bleeding and needed emergency surgery. I could have died if they hadn't operated when they did. My mother sat down in the chair beside my bed, setting her purse on the floor. "Well, you're obviously on the mend now. The doctors must have done a good job." "Where's Abigail?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "She doesn't like hospitals," my mother said. "The smells trigger her anxiety." I nodded slowly. "And how are the paint colors coming along? Did she make a decision?" My parents exchanged a glance. She settled on a soft mint for the walls and a darker teal for the accent wall. My mother said, "It looks lovely." "That's good," I said, my voice flat. "I'm glad that worked out." It was clearly the priority. My father shifted uncomfortably. "Nora, I know you're upset that we couldn't come sooner." "Couldn't?" I interrupted. "Or wouldn't?" "That's not fair," my mother protested. "You know how Abigail gets. We couldn't just leave her in that state." "I was in a car accident. I was trapped in my vehicle. I had emergency surgery. I woke up alone in the ICU." My voice was steady despite the emotion roiling inside me. "And you're talking to me about fairness. We knew you would be okay," my father said dismissively. "You're always okay." I almost died, Dad. The doctor said if the truck had hit me just a few inches differently, I wouldn't be here right now. But sure, you knew I'd be okay because I'm always okay. Because I've spent my entire life having to be okay on my own, while you two dedicated everything to Abigail. My mother's face hardened. "You've always been jealous of the attention we give your sister." "No, Mom, I've never been jealous. I've been neglected. There's a difference." I took a painful breath. "I've spent my whole life making excuses for how you treat me. I've bent over backward to help this family. I pay half your mortgage. I cover Abigail's health insurance. I've been the responsible one, the successful one, the one who never asked for anything in return except maybe for you to show up when I'm literally fighting for my life." "You're being dramatic," my father scoffed. "It was a car accident, not the end of the world." "It was the end of our world, as it's been," I said quietly. "I'm done." "Done with what?" my mother asked, a note of alarm finally entering her voice. "Done pretending this is a healthy family dynamic. Done financially supporting you while receiving nothing in return. Done being the responsible adult child who's expected to understand when her parents can't be bothered to visit her in the hospital because her sister is having a tantrum over paint." My father's face reddened. "Now wait just a minute, young lady. We raised you, put a roof over your head, gave you everything you needed. And I've spent the last decade repaying that basic parental obligation 10 times over," I countered. "I've given you money every month. I've been your on-call legal advisor, financial planner, and emotional support. And the one time I needed you to show up for me, you chose Abigail's paint colors." "You don't understand how difficult it is with her," my mother insisted. "She needs special care. And I didn't need special care after nearly dying." I felt my heart rate monitor beeping faster as my anger rose. "Mom, Dad, listen to yourselves. You're sitting in a hospital room looking at your daughter who has tubes and monitors attached to her body, and you're still defending your choice to prioritize paint colors." A nurse poked her head in, alerted by the change in my vitals. "Everything okay in here?" "Just a family discussion," I said, trying to calm myself. "Try not to get too excited," she advised, giving my parents a disapproving look before leaving. We sat in tense silence for a moment. "What did you mean when you said you're done?" my mother finally asked. "I've made some changes," I said. "Legal changes." "What kind of changes?" My father's voice had an edge now. "I've removed you both as my medical proxies. I've revised my will. I've canceled the automatic transfers to your bank account. I've revoked your access to my vacation property." Their faces registered shock, then anger. "You can't do that," my father sputtered. "I already have," I replied calmly. "The paperwork has been filed. This is about money. My mother looked disgusted. After everything we've done for you. No, Mom, this isn't about money. It's about respect. It's about being valued as a person, not just as an ATM and a problem solver. It's about the fact that in 30 years, you've never once put me first, not even when I was fighting for my life. You're being ridiculous, my father said, standing up. We'll talk about this when you're thinking more clearly. I've never thought more clearly in my life, I replied. The door opened and James walked in carrying a coffee. He stopped when he saw my parents. Ah, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, you made it at last. You, my father pointed accusingly, you put these ideas in her head. On the contrary, James said smoothly. Nora came to these conclusions entirely on her own. I merely facilitated the legal aspects. We're her parents, my mother insisted. We have rights. To a 30-year-old woman who is mentally competent to make her own decisions. No, Mrs. Wilson, you don't have any legal rights in this situation. James set his coffee down and stood beside my bed, a physical representation of whose side he was on. Nora, please. My mother's tone changed to the wheedling one she often used when trying to get her way. You're upset, and understandably so, but we're family. Family forgives. I do forgive you, I said honestly. But forgiveness doesn't mean allowing the same harmful patterns to continue. It doesn't mean pretending everything is okay when it's not. What about Abigail? My father asked. She depends on your financial support. Abigail is 25 years old. It's time she learned to support herself just like I did. My father's face darkened. So that's it. You're just cutting us off. Your own family. You cut me off first, I said quietly. When you decided that paint colors were more important than my life, you made your choice. Now I'm making mine. My mother started to cry, the dramatic tears I'd seen so many times when she didn't get her way. How will we manage the mortgage without your help? How will Abigail get her therapy? The same way other adults do, I replied. You'll figure it out. My father put his arm around my mother. Come on, Margaret. She's clearly not thinking straight. We'll sort this out once she's recovered. As they turned to leave, my father looked back at me. You'll regret this, Nora. When you've calmed down, you'll see how selfish you're being. Goodbye, Dad, I said, feeling strangely peaceful despite the confrontation. I hope someday you understand why I had to do this. After they left, James sat down in the chair my mother had vacated. You did well, Nora. That couldn't have been easy. Actually, I said, surprised to find it was true. It was easier than I expected. After a lifetime of putting them first, putting myself first, feels right. And for the first time since the accident, I felt something beyond the physical pain. I felt free. The door to my hospital room burst open the next morning, revealing my sister Abigail in all her dramatic glory. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair disheveled, and she was still wearing pajama pants with a hastily thrown-on sweatshirt. How could you? She demanded without preamble. Mom called me sobbing last night. They told me what you did. I sighed, bracing myself for the storm I knew was coming. Good morning to you too, Abigail. Nice of you to finally visit. Don't be sarcastic, she snapped. You're tearing apart our family. Mom said you're cutting everyone off financially. How am I supposed to pay for my therapy, my medications? The same way I paid for law school, I replied calmly. Get a job. Abigail's face contorted with anger. You know I can't work like normal people. I have anxiety and sensory issues. My therapist says high-pressure environments are toxic for me. Then find a low-pressure job, I suggested. Work from home, start small. But Abigail, you're 25 years old. It's time you learn to support yourself. This is because they didn't rush to the hospital, isn't it? She paced the small room, gesturing wildly. You know I was having a crisis. The paint colors were all wrong and it was triggering my anxiety attacks. They couldn't just leave me. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She truly believed what she was saying. In her mind, her paint color crisis genuinely outweighed my life-threatening injuries. Abigail, I said quietly, I almost died. Do you understand that the truck hit my car so hard that it flipped over twice? I had internal bleeding. I needed emergency surgery. and no one from my family could be bothered to come to the hospital. We were going to come eventually, she insisted. Eventually wasn't good enough. I needed you then. Not when it was convenient, not when your paint crisis was resolved, but when I was lying in the ICU wondering if I was going to live or die. Abigail plopped down in the chair, her anger momentarily deflated. You're always so dramatic, Nora. The doctors were taking care of you. You didn't really need us. That's where you're wrong, I said. I did need you. All of you. But none of you were there. So this is punishment, she asked, her voice rising again. Taking away my financial support because you're mad we didn't drop everything the second you called. It's not punishment, Abigail, it's a consequence. And it's been a long time coming. What's that supposed to mean? It means that for my entire life I've been pushed aside so that your needs could come first. When we were kids, it was your tantrums that got all the attention. As adults, it's your crises that take priority, even over my actual life-threatening emergency. I financially supported this family for years, and when I needed emotional support in return, no one could be bothered. Abigail's face flushed. That's not true. Mom and Dad love you. They're so proud of you. They're proud of what I provide, I corrected. They're proud of having a successful daughter they can brag about to their friends. But they don't actually see me as a person with needs and feelings. That's not fair, Abigail protested, but her voice had less conviction. Isn't it? When was the last time either of them called just to ask how I was doing? When was the last time anyone in this family showed up for me without wanting something in return? Abigail was silent, unable to come up with an example. Let me ask you something, I continued. If the situation were reversed, if you were the one in the hospital and I was having a meltdown over paint colors, what do you think Mom and Dad would have done? Her silence was answer enough. They would have been at your bedside within hours, wouldn't they? They would have dropped everything, including me and my paint crisis. Abigail looked down at her hands. It's not my fault they treat us differently. You're right, I agreed. It's not your fault how they raised us, but it is your responsibility as an adult to recognize the unhealthy dynamic and do something about it. You're 25, Abigail. It's time to grow up. So that's it. She looked up at tears in her eyes. You're just cutting me off. Your own sister. I'm removing myself from a toxic family dynamic, I clarified. I'm setting boundaries that should have been set years ago. What am I supposed to do? She asked, a note of genuine fear in her voice. Whatever other adults your age do, I said, not unkindly. Find a job. Learn to manage your emotions without making them everyone else's emergency. Build a life that doesn't depend on others constantly sacrificing for you. I don't know how, she admitted quietly, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of self-awareness in my sister. That's because Mom and Dad never taught you, I said. They thought they were protecting you, but they were actually preventing you from developing the skills you need to function in the real world. Abigail was silent for a long moment. So you're really not going to help with my therapy costs anymore, or my car payment? No, I'm not, I confirmed. Those are your responsibilities now. What about Mom and Dad? They're counting on your help with the mortgage. They'll need to figure that out too. Maybe downsize, maybe take on extra work. Whatever other people their age do when they can't afford their lifestyle. Abigail stood up, her initial anger replaced by a quieter, more thoughtful demeanor. They're really upset, you know. Dad was talking about contesting your decisions legally. He won't get anywhere, I said confidently. I have James protecting my interests, and everything I've done is perfectly legal. I'm not obligated to support my capable adult parents or my capable adult sister. She nodded slowly. I should go. They're waiting in the car. They didn't want to come in after yesterday. Abigail, I called as she reached the door. This isn't about punishing any of you. This is about finally taking care of myself after a lifetime of putting everyone else first. She paused, her back to me. I never realized you felt this way, that you were sacrificing so much. That's because no one ever asked, I said simply. After she left, a nurse came in to check my vitals. Everything okay? Your heart rate was up a bit. Family visit, I explained. She nodded knowingly. Those can be more exhausting than physical therapy sometimes. This one was necessary, though, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. For the first time, I'd spoken honestly to my sister about our family dynamic. Whether it would change anything remained to be seen, but at least I'd finally said what needed to be said. As I rested that afternoon, I thought about my family driving home, probably dissecting our conversation, maybe even beginning to understand my perspective. Or maybe not. Either way, I knew I'd done the right thing for myself, even if it hurt them in the short term. Sometimes healing requires removing yourself from the source of the wound, even when that source is the people who are supposed to love you most. The next 2 months were a journey of both physical and emotional healing. My body slowly mended bones, knitting back together. Internal injuries, healing bruises, fading from angry, purple to yellow to nothing. My heart was on a similar trajectory, though the process wasn't always linear. In the hospital, I was surrounded by a support system I hadn't even realized I had. David came by every evening after work bringing me case files to review when I insisted I was bored, but mostly just keeping me company. My colleagues sent flowers, cards, and care packages. Even clients I'd worked with over the years sent their good wishes. James visited regularly, not just as my attorney, but as a friend, often bringing books he thought I might enjoy, or simply sitting quietly while I napped. The nurses and doctors who cared for me became like a temporary family, their kindness a balm for the familial wound that was still raw. When I was released from the hospital after 3 weeks, David insisted I stay at his guest house, rather than alone in my apartment. "You can't manage stairs yet," he pointed out practically. "My place is all on one level, and I've got a home office so I can work from home some days to keep an eye on you." I was touched by his generosity. "Why are you doing all this?" I asked as he helped settle me into the comfortable guest room that overlooked his garden. "We're colleagues, not family." He smiled, adjusting my pillows. "Maybe because decent human beings help each other when they're in need. You'd do the same for me." And he was right, I would have. But it made me realize something: profound kindness should be reciprocal. For years, my relationship with my family had been one way, with me giving and them taking. Here was David, a work colleague, showing more genuine care than my own parents had. My recovery gave me time to reflect on my life and relationships. I joined an online support group for people estranged from toxic family members, finding comfort in knowing I wasn't alone in my experience. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Marin, who specialized in family trauma. "What you're feeling is grief," she told me during one session. "Even though no one died, you're grieving the family you wished you had, the family they could have been but weren't." "Will it always hurt this much?" I asked. "No," she assured me. "Grief changes over time. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes more manageable. You learn to build a life around it." And slowly I did. As my physical strength returned, so did my emotional resilience. I began to see that cutting ties with my toxic family wasn't just an act of self-preservation, but an act of self-love. I deserved better than what they had given me. I deserved to be surrounded by people who valued me, not just for what I could provide, but for who I was. 6 weeks after the accident, I received an unexpected text from Abigail. "Can we talk? Just us." I agreed to meet her at a cafe near my apartment, curious but cautious. When she arrived, I hardly recognized her. Gone was the perpetually disheveled, emotionally charged sister I knew. This Abigail was composed, her hair neatly styled, wearing a simple but professional outfit. "You look different," I observed as she sat down across from me. "I am different," she said. "Or at least I'm trying to be." She fidgeted with her napkin. "I got a job, part-time at a bookstore. The owner is really understanding about my anxiety, lets me work in the back cataloging when I'm having bad days." "That's great, Abigail," I said, genuinely pleased for her. "How are you liking it?" "It's hard," she admitted. "Being responsible for showing up, dealing with customers. But also, good. Like I'm finally a real person, not just mom and dad's problem child." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "And how are mom and dad handling your newfound independence?" She rolled her eyes. "Not well. Mom keeps trying to solve problems I don't ask her to solve. Dad keeps offering to talk to my boss if things get too stressful." I had to tell them to back off, that I need to figure things out on my own. That couldn't have been easy, I said, impressed. It wasn't. She took a sip of her coffee. After you cut us off financially, they had to make some changes. Dad's talking about selling the house, maybe moving to a condo. Mom's looking for part-time work. They're not happy about it. I didn't expect them to be, I acknowledged. They still talk about you like you're the villain in all this, she said quietly. But I've been thinking a lot about what you said in the hospital, about how they never prepared me for the real world, how they created this dynamic where my needs always came first. She met my eyes directly. I'm seeing a new therapist, one who's pushing me to take responsibility for my life, instead of just validating my feelings all the time. She helped me see that what happened to our family isn't all on you. It's not all on you either, I pointed out. We were both children shaped by our parents' choices. But we're adults now, she said with surprising wisdom. We get to choose what happens next. And what do you want to happen next, Abigail? She hesitated. I'd like us to try being sisters again. Real sisters, not just the responsible one and the problem child. I know I've been selfish and difficult. I know I've taken you for granted. But I'd like to change that if you'll give me a chance. I studied her face, looking for signs of the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to, but saw only sincerity and a touch of vulnerability. I'd like that too, I said finally. But I need you to understand something important. I'm not going back to the way things were. I'm not resuming financial support or getting drawn back into unhealthy family dynamics. If we're going to have a relationship, it has to be built on mutual respect. I understand. She nodded. I'm not asking for money or favors, just a chance to know my sister as an adult. Maybe we could have dinner sometimes, or see a movie. I'd like that, I said, feeling a cautious optimism. Small steps. As we parted ways that day, I felt a mix of emotions. Hope for a new kind of relationship with my sister. Sadness for the years lost to unhealthy patterns. But mostly I felt proud of myself for standing firm in my boundaries while still leaving room for positive change. 2 months after the accident that nearly took my life, I returned to work part-time. My body was still healing, but my spirit was stronger than ever. I had lost a family, but gained something perhaps more valuable, the knowledge that I was worthy of respect, love, and genuine care, not because of what I could give others, but simply because of who I was. And that, in the end, was worth more than any family fortune or obligation could ever be. 8 months have passed since the day I woke up alone in that ICU. 8 months of healing, growing, and rebuilding my life on my own terms. Sometimes I still marvel at how a near-death experience became the catalyst for the most profound transformation of my life. My physical recovery progressed better than the doctors expected. The limp from my fractured pelvis is now barely noticeable. The scars from surgery have faded to thin silver lines. The nightmares about the accident have mostly subsided, though they still visit occasionally on stormy nights when rain pounds against my windows. What has changed most, however, is my inner landscape. The people pleaser who would sacrifice her own needs for family approval is gone. In her place stands a woman who understands her worth is not determined by what she gives to others, but by the dignity and respect with which she treats herself. David and I have grown closer through this experience. What began as collegial concern evolved into a deep friendship, and recently something more. He was there for my darkest moments without obligation or expectation. He saw my vulnerability not as weakness to exploit, but as courage to honor. Last week, when he kissed me for the first time as we walked through the autumn leaves in the park, it felt like the most natural progression in the world. James has become more than just my attorney. He's become a mentor and friend, someone who understands the complexities of family dynamics and the courage it takes to walk away from toxic relationships. Chosen family, he calls the bonds we've formed, sometimes more meaningful than those we're born into. My relationship with Abigail has taken a path I never expected. After our cafe meeting, we began a careful, measured reconnection. Weekly texts became occasional dinners. She continued with her job at the bookstore, eventually moving to full-time and getting her own small apartment. Our conversations evolved from cautious small talk to honest discussions about our childhood and the unhealthy patterns we were both trying to break. I never realized how much I relied on everyone managing my emotions for me, she admitted during one dinner. My new therapist says I was stuck in emotional adolescence because mom and dad never let me experience the consequences of my actions. How are they doing? I asked, genuinely curious, though still firm in my decision to maintain distance. Still struggling. She sighed. They had to sell the house, which dad sees as your fault, not the result of years of financial mismanagement. Mom found a part-time job, but complains about it constantly. They're having trouble adjusting to life without your financial support. And how do you feel about that? I asked carefully. She considered the question thoughtfully. I used to blame you too, but now I see it differently. You were enabling them just like they were enabling me. Breaking that cycle was painful but necessary for all of us. I was impressed by her insight. That couldn't have been an easy conclusion to reach. It wasn't, she admitted. But hitting rock bottom forced me to grow up in ways coasting on your support never would have. My parents and I remain estranged. They've made several attempts to reconnect, all centered around what I could do for them, rather than acknowledging the hurt they caused. Each time, I politely but firmly maintained my boundaries. It's painful sometimes, especially during holidays, or when I see happy families together. But Dr. Marin reminds me that grief is the price we pay for making necessary changes. The empty space hurts, she told me, but it's better than filling that space with relationships that diminish you. She was right. The empty space has gradually filled with people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. I've built a chosen family of friends, colleagues, and even some of the medical staff who cared for me during my recovery. We celebrate holidays together, support each other through challenges, and share in each other's joys. 3 months ago, I started volunteering with a support group for people recovering from family trauma. Sharing my story has helped others find the courage to set their own boundaries, while hearing their experiences has helped me understand I'm not alone in my journey. One young woman, after hearing me speak, approached me with tears in her eyes. I always thought I was selfish for wanting my needs to matter, she said. You've helped me see that self-respect isn't selfishness. That moment crystallized something I've been learning throughout this journey. Our stories have power. By honoring our truth, we not only heal ourselves, but create space for others to do the same. The most profound lesson I've learned is that family isn't defined by DNA or obligation. True family, whether biological or chosen, is built on mutual respect, genuine care, and the freedom to be your authentic self. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is to let go of the family we were born into, to make room for the family we deserve. I don't know what the future holds. Abigail and I continue to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. Perhaps someday my parents will truly understand the consequences of their choices and be willing to form a new kind of relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Or perhaps not. Either way, I've found peace in knowing that my worth isn't determined by the recognition of it. I've lost a family but found myself. And in that discovery, I've built a life filled with authentic connections, self-respect, and a joy I never knew was possible when I was carrying the weight of unhealthy family expectations. Sometimes the deepest wounds become our greatest teachers. My near-death experience showed me that life is too precious to spend it seeking approval from those unwilling or unable to give it. Sometimes love means walking away. Sometimes healing means letting go. I've built a new life from the wreckage of that accident, one where I matter not because of what I give, but simply because I exist. And in that transformation, I've discovered what family truly means. Not those bound to us by obligation, but those who choose us, value us, and love us for exactly who we are. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to distance yourself from family for your own well-being? Or have you found healing through rebuilding relationships on healthier terms? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your worth is inherent, not something you have to earn through endless giving.